So, hey everybody, and welcome to the Hunslet Knit Along. This is a very fun, very relaxed approach to doing this beautiful stranded cardigan from the Rowan Magazine 76. I think it's just a lovely, lovely garment. As you know, a knit along is not a class. I am not expecting that I will be teaching you how to do stranded knitting. I am assuming that you have already done this to some extent, or you are, working through this. I'm going to be moving along and looking at things like chart, gauge, fit, catching floats, and other kinds of things that are specific to stranded knitting. But I'm not going to get into, color dominance and how you should hold your yarn or whatever, because that's a very, very personal decision how you do that. Does anybody have, before we get started with this whole thing, any questions that you want to ask about size, fit, anything else that's sort of general related to choosing a size or colors or anything like that?
My gauge is totally different with I do it two-handed, the ferrule two-handed method. And when I did that, my gauge totally changed.
That's not at all surprising. And that's why we really do need to swatch in the pattern using the method of stranding that you plan to use when you knit this sweater. If you are too loose, then you need to go down a needle size. And when I say too loose, if the swatch of 26 stitches is not 4 inches, but more than 4 inches, then you need to go down a needle size. If your swatch is smaller than it needs to be, then you need to go up a needle size. Or you need to sort of make sure that you're stretching out your stitches a little bit as you make them. Every 3 stitches or so, you should sort of stretch them apart on your right hand needle. But yes, the gauge of stranded knitting is very different than the gauge of plain stockinette.
Yeah, I have had very little ferrule knitting experience. I've had issues with it, but I'm going ahead with this. I found when I did it flat, I had a lot of trouble with the colors not catching correctly. And I sent you, Ellen, and something from, I think, Ariana Halliday, I can't remember, about how to handle that. You do 2 stitches on each edge, which I found really fascinating. So that pulls both colors to the edge, so you don't have that problem.
Which problem do you mean?
When I'm doing it flat, sometimes the end stitch is just way too loose, depending on what color is pulled over. And this, what I sent you, if you get a chance, look at it. It's really interesting, and it's 2 stitches on both sides and 1 for each color. So it's really caught on each side. She said if you steek it anyway, you're going to have 2 stitches on each side, so it really doesn't matter. I found that really fascinating. I don't know if other people have problems knitting it flat with that getting too wobbly on the edge.
So I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's certainly something that you can do. The other thing you can do would be to catch your your passive color all the way to the edge, do that sort of woven in, which is what I do. The other thing that you need to remember is when you're coming back, you almost have to treat it as intarsia. So if you're coming and the one, like say your background color, you're coming up to the next color, but that next color wasn't used at the end, you're going to have to twist those strands.
That's a great idea.
As you would if it were intarsia.
Never thought of that. Thank you.
So, but yeah, there's 2 ways to handle that, right?
That's a great idea. I didn't think of it, so I appreciate that input.
No, and I love the idea of the extra stitch at the end. And I was asking Ginny, I asked her whether I should add an extra stitch for the seam, and we got into the whole kind of thing with the chart, and I decided that I would not add an extra stitch. I was just going to do it exactly the way the pattern indicated, and there it is. And let me just say right here, I'm not Ginny Stein, okay? I'm doing this knit along with you guys because I need the practice as much as anybody else, okay? I've done a decent amount of stranded knitting, but it's been a while. I do know how to catch my floats. I do know how to weave it all in, but you know, in terms of like any of the intricacies of the various ways to hold your yarn and color dominance and stuff, that is outside my, you know, real understanding as to why you do it one way or the other. I hold my yarn with my background color in my right hand and my contrast color in my left hand. I am an English thrower. Okay, so if you're thinking in terms of dominance, I am carrying my background color in my dominant hand. That being said, if you cannot knit or purl or both with your non-dominant hand, that's okay. You know, if you need to drop one color and pick up the other one and then, you know, just work through it, that is fine too. I'll tell you that my first stranded knitting was a K facet sweater. I knew nothing about how to do it. And I just sort of swapped which hand I was carrying which yarn in based on which row had more of that color. So that I was doing more of the stitches with a hand that was easier for me. And you know what? It came out beautifully. So I really don't want to worry about that too much. Okay. We're doing the best we can here. I think it's going to be beautiful. By the time you finish your swatch, it's going to be gorgeous. You could do this in the round and steek it, but that's not what we're doing. People have done that. I've seen it on Ravelry. You could add extra 4 stitches here and then cut it. You know how I feel about seams. I am a seam girl. I think they're important. This is how we're doing it. If you guys want to do it differently, that is totally fine. You do you. Okay? All right. So has everybody picked their size, done their swatch? Questions about swatching? Questions about gauge? Marcia, you look like you want to say something.
I haven't swatched, well, I haven't done color work on the purl side. I've only done it on the knit side all the way, like doing the sticky thing. Sorry.
Okay.
So
Well,
I'm just starting my swatch. And is there a little part in the book that tells us how to do that?
No.
no,
Oh,
there is not anything in the book that tells you how to do that.
oh,
Like I said, if you just can't manage 2 yarns, 2 hands, or 2 colors, 2 hands,
that's okay.
put them both in one hand and just drop the one you're not using and pick it up. It's a little slower, but you'll get there.
Okay.
Okay? Please don't worry about it. And yes, as Carol points out to everybody, it's always available on YouTube. And every video that you watch is going to tell you a different way to do it. Okay? So I thought that the chart was a little confusing. Did anybody else find the chart a little confusing? Well,
Definitely.
first of all, it's very small, right? And it's broken up into 2 separate places. So they've got the one chart that has the left side, I guess, and then they have the other chart that has the right side. So what I did was to cut it out. You know, I made a Xerox and we cut it apart. And if you look at this is the whole chart for the entirety of the back of your sweater. And it shows you where to begin and where to end for the various sizes that you could make. I'm making the second size, so I went ahead and put a pink line there to sort of indicate where that was, and a pink line over here to indicate where the end is. Now, this is teeny tiny, and if you need, you can follow this all the way across, you know, looking at each individual pattern repeat. I had Ginny pull this and just double check because we were both really struggling on Sunday. What I ended up doing was to take and put two of the swatch charts that I gave you together. So this basically says, here's the beginning of the chart for your size, right? Here's that pink line. And here's the end of the chart for your size. Here's this pink line. And in between, you're just going to be working pattern repeats one after the other. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so I found this much, much more useful for me to work from this big chart, but having this indication to show you where in the pattern you're going to begin your repeat. Okay, this I think is probably the single most confusing part of the pattern, is to know for your size where in the repeat it begins. And you'll want to look in the magazine on the chart and find which size you're making and where that size begins on your two repeat pattern.
91 through 97 centimeters. Where
Okay.
would that begin on the large chart? I don't understand.
Okay, so do you see how this is the smallest size, okay? And it correlates with this line, this dark line that goes right up here. The 81 to 86 centimeter is the next one. That's the size I'm making, and that's this line here that I've highlighted with pink. The 91 to 97 centimeter that you're making is right here. And so if you look at your chart down here, you can see that your size here begins right here, just to the right of this little dot in the center of your narrow square. Okay, so you could draw a pink line this way to say this is where you begin. And then over here, you're 91, you're going to end right here, just after that little dot. Okay. And then it's kind of the same way when you have a pattern repeat. It might say knit 1, purl 3, knit 1, and then it'll have a star, and then you'll have a bunch of stuff you do in the middle to last 6 stitches, and then it will have something different that you do for your last 6 stitches. This is the same thing. What it's telling you is that you're going to begin your pattern repeat right here, and then you're going to repeat your pattern repeat until your last bit, and it's going to end here.
So we're treating that like one pattern.
This is one pattern repeat that after you begin at this random spot that is associated with the size you're making. So I'm starting right here on my rightmost edge, and I'm going to do this. And then I will have come to the end of my pattern repeat. I am going to go all the way back to the very beginning of my pattern repeat, right? I'm only starting at this pink line at the very beginning. After I've done this first bit right here, I'm going to come back to here, right? Or, you know, here, they're the same. Okay, so I could, if I wanted to, start here and then come across here and just, you know, continue those motifs to my last bit, and then I would end here. Right?
Yeah.
When I was saying that, the black line in the middle, you go past that.
This is one pattern repeat.
Okay.
Right? This black line in the middle indicates a pattern repeat, just as this one here does and this one here does. So this is 2 full pattern repeats. And I needed the 2 full pattern repeats to show me where to begin and where to end. Because if you don't have this marked off, when you're coming back, you're not going to know where to begin. You don't want to begin over here. You want to begin here. That's where your pattern begins, coming back this way. Did anybody else struggle with that? I found that to be rather challenging. Well, especially since I didn't have the magazine with me. I had one chart. I had like one little piece of it, and I was really having a moment. It was not good. So we wanted to talk about catching the floats. Was that something that we were concerned about? Did anybody have a question on catching the floats on the knit side when we're doing the knits? That's fine. Everything is fine with catching the floats on the knits. Okay. Let me go ahead and unknit this last bit, and then I'll catch the floats on the wrong side here.
My question is that I've heard that a lot of people aren't bothering to catch floats unless it's excessively large amount of stitches, that they're finding that it's really not necessary. I don't know that if that's true. That's why I'm asking. I know you said there's someone in the group who's a great Fair Isle knitter. I'd love to hear feedback because I have no idea.
Well, okay, when you do traditional Fair Isle, okay, this is not Fair Isle, this is stranded knitting. Fair Isle is a subset of stranded knitting that has certain rules. And one of the rules of Fair Isle is that you never go more than 3 stitches in one color. Okay, so you don't have to catch your floats because you've only got 3 stitches, it's really small. But if you look at this, you've got 13 stitches that go across. And while you don't have to catch your floats, it might impact your gauge a little bit if you are pulling that long float in any kind of excessive way. Some people struggle with that, and some people just struggle with the idea that you might get your fingers caught in the, when you're putting it on in the sleeve. And the last thing you want to do is to break that. I think 12 or 13 is a lot of stitches not to catch your float. So it's up to you. Again, you're not obligated to catch your float if you don't want to. No stranded knitting police are going to come and take your needles away. But I think if you've got a long set of stitches, that you might really do better if you do catch those. But again, when you are working your swatch, you'll come across those 12 stitches and you can see what you think. Did you do your swatch? What do you think? Not done the swatch yet? Yeah. I think doing the swatch, I'm a big swatch fan. I think doing the swatch is so, well, first of all, it's important to get your gauge, but it's so incredibly empowering. You do that swatch and you're like, yes, I can do this. I can do this. Look, I did this. I did a whole motif. Now it's just a matter of doing that, 10 times in a row, right? So I would advise you to do the swatch, and just remember that it's a swatch and don't stress too much about it. And if it looks horrible, then you can do it over. It's okay.
Ellen, I had a question about the size.
Yes.
The sample that was in the shop, did you guys decide that that was the second or the third size based off of the gauge?
So they typically send us the second size. I think that sweater was knit a little more loosely than it might have been. I did the measurements and it actually came out in between the second and the third size.
Okay.
So if you knit to gauge, it's going to be about 3 inches, 3 to 4 inches smaller than the one in the shop,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Your best bet is to use the needle that gives you the gauge, the correct gauge, and choose the size that is closest to a sweater that fits you the way you like it.
I did a swatch and I struggled doing doing the stranded purl. I've only done it in the round. So at my shop, the yarn shop I went to today, they suggested going backwards. So knitting in the purl. So I'm thinking of doing that. Do you see any, do you think that that might be a problem? Because I
I
went
don't
home and I did the purl knitting it. And it was
purling
actually
backwards.
neater.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. That is wonderful. If that's something that works for you, you can absolutely do that.
Okay, great.
Okay, so if I'm working along and I'm purling, and I'm not going to follow the pattern here because I can't figure out exactly where I am, but if I'm going to be purling and I want to catch my contrast color, my left-hand color, do you see that I'm bringing that left-hand color up? And then when I go to purl, it's caught. If I'm going to be knitting with my main color and I want to catch my contrast color, I'm just going to lift that contrast color up. And you see how it's then caught here? And then I'm going to come down with it. Right? So, and you can actually work it this way all the way across. If you had 12 stitches, you could catch that float every single time, and that's kind of called weaving it in. Now, if I'm working with this, with my contrast color, lots of stitches, and I need to catch my main color, that's a little more challenging. So let me make a contrast color stitch here. So what I want to do here is I want to take my main color and bring it under the wrong way. So do you see how I'm bringing that up under my needle? And then I'm going to take my color that I'm using and bring it over. And then I'm going to bring my color that I'm catching the float of back. And that gives me a catch of my main color.
Yeesh.
So think about it in terms of the color. If you're catching your main color, before you put your contrast color in place, wrap your main color the wrong way around your right needle. Then wrap the color you want to use the right way, then unwrap that one. And that's how you're going to catch that float of your main color. You're going to catch your contrast color by just lifting it up. Lifting it up and bring your yarn around. And then you would catch this one by wrapping it the wrong way, then unwrapping it. And that way it gets caught. I would advise you practice the catching those little floats just sort of on your swatch or just kind of as you go along. It's not really crucial, as who was it pointed out. If you end up not catching your float at all, it's not a crisis. You can just not have it. But if you practice a little bit, you'll kind of get used to it.
Just did my swatch. I'm still trying to figure out what colors I want to do.
Ooh, I want to see. I want to
Yeah,
play.
you did a couple of swatches, Jal.
Ooh.
Oh, she's a pro.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
It's the backside.
Yeah, you're a
So
pro.
you wove every stitch, right?
Every other stitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you leaning towards?
The original one, the kind of cumin color.
Uh-huh.
I like the sulfur, but
I do too.
yeah, I don't know.
For my swatch, doing a couple of stitches for the border, is that gonna change anything with my tension, do you think? Okay, like we were talking on another project of mine. Okay,
Yeah. Give yourself an extra. I think the swatch is 24 stitches, and isn't this got a gauge of 26 stitches?
yeah.
So give yourself an extra stitch on either side if you would like, and that'll give you, a solid 4 inches.
Yeah, just remember that you did that though when you're on your way back, because hello. Mine does not look like the pattern, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I will tell you that stranded knitting is sort of humbling for me. There's a lot to keep track of. It's not the kind of knitting that I find calming and relaxing. It is the kind of knitting that requires my full focus, which is kind of nice. There are times when you don't really want to go swimming in your own thoughts. So this is that kind of pattern that will require you to focus on it and kind of really, really let your brain be completely engaged. If you wanted to just, when it's time to catch a float, if you just put it down and twisted it, that is like not a crisis. The only time that you really absolutely positively want to have that float caught is here where you've got 13 stitches. You can see on your chart. You've got it here, and then you've got it in these 2 rows where it's more than 13. It's, I don't even know how many, 15, whatever, some number greater than 13. You could catch it right in the middle. It's okay to have 6 stitches and then 6 stitches, or, you could do it every third time.
Okay.
But if you had to simply stop and twist that yarn, okay. Again, the stranding police are not coming.
Okay. Okay.
You can do that any way you like. There's not one right way to do this, people, okay? Which is why I hesitate to say, all right, this is how I'm doing it. This is how I'm doing it. You do you, right? Two yarns, 2 colors, 1 hand, right hand, left hand, doesn't matter at all. Okay,
Okay.
Marcia.
I have a question about the chart. When I'm going round and round and round, I just keep following the rows. But when you do this, you go 1 to 24, and then you go 24 back to 1.
Very
do the
excellent
purl?
point. Yes. So when you are working from a chart, it's important to remember that the chart does not tell you what stitch to make. It tells you what fabric you are making. Okay? And you are reading your chart as you are knitting. Okay? I mean, in the same way that you are knitting. So when you are knitting, you are going in this direction. When you are purling, your other side of your fabric is facing you. So you're coming back in this direction.
Oh, yeah, okay. That totally makes sense. I just couldn't
Right?
think of it right then.
Yeah. And when you're knitting in the round, you never have the back of your fabric facing you. So here and here and here. But when you're doing it flat, yeah, you have to come back in this direction. So if your motif does not look quite right, that's probably why. So at that point, what I would do would just be to work 2 rows of your main color and then start again,
Mhm.
right?
Luckily, I'm not that far.
I am so very sorry for not having mentioned that.
So I'm excited about this. I've been excited about this for a long time. The thing I'm most excited about is doing this with a group so I get it done,
Me too.
right?
Yes,
Excuse
same,
me.
100%.
So what should I have done for next Monday?
Oh, you're going to be that girl, are you?
I want to get this done. I love it.
So in a week, I would say that if you could get through 1 repeat, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you're
Oh, yeah,
talking
it does.
about 130 or more stitches and 24 rows. I think that's reasonable. Now, there's a learning curve. So many of us are still swatching. Many of us are still figuring out how we're going to hold our yarn. Many of us are still figuring out how to read a chart, and that's okay. Okay. So this first week, get comfortable enough to complete 1 repeat of the rows over your 130, 160, 180, however many stitches, you know. And then we could say finish the back up to where we begin our armhole little addition. So that's super wonderful about this particular design. You know, we talk in Club Crazy for You a lot about the way sweaters are constructed and how much ease you need, especially if it's a drop shoulder, because it makes a portion of your sleeve length and blah, blah, blah. What he has done here is to give you a little extra bit of fabric that leans out over so that you can have more of a sleeve cap formed by the body without having to have that extra 4 inches of ease in the body. You follow what I'm saying? So he's giving you a few extra stitches right here that will help make the drop shoulder more of a drop, but not having the body too large. I think that's a wonderful technique. And, you know, Stephanie, you were talking about if maybe you just wanted to do this in the solid color, that would be a great thing. You know, you would learn this technique, and that would be useful as far as understanding how to do that if you wanted to going forward.
So we're starting with the back, right?
Starting with the back. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And if we're adventurous, and I'm not, I mean, but try to get all the way up to shape armhole extension, or no, just try to get 1 repeat done.
One repeat.
Okay.
24 rows.
All right. Okay.
24 rows. Yeah, there are actually on this size 2, 3. There are 3 pattern repeats before we get to this place where we have to add additional stitches. And then there are 1, 2.5 repeats after the armhole extensions are done. So that should take us through some of February. And we'll see how it goes. You know, we'll see how quickly we are doing this. And if it feels like it's a glacial pace and you really would rather go more, nothing's stopping you, you know. The fronts are exactly like the back.
How, and so this sounds like a very basic question. Any tips from anybody who's done this chart work before, other than what I can think of as a post-it note to kind of follow, like to continue to not lose your space where you're at on the chart?
This is sticky tape. This is I have this at the shop. It's highlighter tape.
Oh,
Yes, and you want to put this above the row that you're on. And
okay.
this lifts up and then you move it. A lot of people put the highlighter tape below the row that you're on, but I find that to be very confusing because when you have the highlighter tape above the row that you're working on, what you see below on your chart matches up with what you see in your fabric. If you're hiding that, you know, I think it's confusing.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does anybody use an iPad that has a pen or that has a writing piece? So I always save my patterns to books. And when on my iPad anyway, I can tap on that and it gives you pens and it also gives you highlighters. So you can check off everything that you do. So if you're repeating something a couple of times, or, you know, you can always go back and erase what you've done to pick up to pick it up again. So you can highlight everything that you've completed. And then say you're using that same chart to do another section of the sweater, you can erase all the highlights that you've already done when you're finished and start all over again.
Brilliant.
I
Does
don't know,
anyone have
brilliant,
knit
but
companion? Some people really, really like that. Yeah. So I don't have that. I've always been intrigued by it, but I've never used it.
When I look across, I'm the fifth size. So I'm doing the 112 to 117 centimeters. And when I count across, it's like eight repeats. Is that possible to the other side of the 112 to 117?
See.
I guess it'll be obvious when I do the
I don't
rim.
I don't see 8 repeats.
I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a half.
Yeah. You're doing 112 to
Uh-huh.
117. Yeah. So
Okay.
if you look and you think in terms of each repeat having one round and one sort of skinny.
Yeah, the
Right.
diamond or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just counting your
Yeah, the 2 of them.
rounds. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I see 6.5 rounds and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 full diamond.
Yeah, I get 7.5. Yeah. I mean, it'll be obvious when I start doing the dark rim, it'll have a certain number of stitches. I'll eventually run out of stitches.
Well, exactly. Exactly. And I like to put a stitch marker
in between the sets.
at the beginning of where my pattern repeat actually begins and where my pattern repeat ends so that I know when I'm in that weird land.
Yep, that's another good idea, right? So you can keep recalculating, right? Instead of going off the wrong journey for 2 more rounds. Right? But you can definitely see the.
Oh, pretty.
Yeah, it's showing up well. So
Light
I'm
and
happy.
dark.
It's that ultramarine and the scree, I think, or whatever. Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah, I think it's really fun to see everybody's color choices.
I'm working with the carbons with black and blue.
God.
That was, really smart. It just happens to be all I had handy to do my swatch. But I'm using the can you see the different colors? The tweed color. Yeah, I can't wait to get to those other colors.
Oh, that's beautiful.
This has been very interesting. But it's so much fun. I'm enjoying it.
I'm so glad to hear that. Anybody else want to share the colors that they're doing? Don't be shy. We're all going to be like BFFs by the time this is over.
I'm doing the same as was in the book.
Okay.
The
Lynn,
red and the camel.
Yeah.
Lynn, you have the same as in the book, right?
Yes, same as in the book. I bought it from you at
Yeah.
Vogue.
Yeah, I remember. Very nice.
Patricia's doing the red. Somebody was doing red, they said.
I'm
Claudia's
red and camel.
pretty. How's your swatch coming along?
Just started it. I put a stitch marker on the two ends so I don't roll over.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good
So
idea.
two, and then the pattern, and then when I come back, I'll put the other one over here.
So I'm doing sorbet and ancient. But I don't know if you can see because I'm way behind.
Oh, that looks great.
Oh, pretty.
Oh, they're greens.
It's a green and yeah, kind
Oh,
of a
very pretty,
green
very
and a
pretty.
grayish green.
Nice.
You see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I kind of did as well is on the chart, the chart that you sent us,
Yeah.
I colored in, see the red, how I put red where red's supposed to be?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that helps keeping straight, which is
Yeah.
which,
Right.
as I
That
go.
was, yeah, very good.
Anything can help.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take all the tips, huh?
I'm doing the original color that's in the chart or in the example. So I'm working on the ribbing right now for the seafarer with the seafarer.
Pretty.
And it says in the next instruction, it says to add a number of stitches, 1 to 3 stitches. Where did you add that in your row?
I just did it sort of in the close to the end.
Okay.
Did you
Yeah.
make one? Is that how you added it?
I didn't. So what I did is I just did a knit front and back on one of them because it was in ribbing,
Yeah.
but I did it on the wrong side. So you're never going to see it. I mean, and that's the thing about stranded. Everybody tends to be so concerned about the evenness of their stitches and, their stitch work. And when you're dealing with a very smooth yarn in stockinette, all of those little things matter a great deal. When you are working with a yarn like felted tweed that's a little bit nubbly and it has different colors, and we're doing all of this color shift and this color work, your eye is drawn to the overall effect of the motif rather than to the perfection of the individual stitches. So please, please, please cut yourself slack, give yourself all the grace that you need, and know that nobody is checking the perfection of your stitches. They're just looking at and saying, oh my gosh, wow, you did that? Okay. I promise. I've never ever seen a stranded knitting project that I've thought, oh, that looks messy. No, they're gorgeous. They're just so beautiful. So please be easy. Yes, Marcia.
Were you going to say something about the ribbing?
Hang on.
When we're
Let's ask
starting?
Marcia's question. Go ahead.
Were you going to say something about the ribbing
Oh,
at this
yes.
first class?
Yes, I do like to have my ribbing done on a needle 2 sizes smaller. I don't need to say that for this group, for this project, because Martin Storey also likes to have ribbing done on a needle 2 sizes smaller. So please pay attention to that. If anybody struggles with their ribbing, even on a needle 2 sizes smaller, or they're not happy with that, let me know. Does anybody struggle with ribbing? You guys are good on ribbing, right? So it's super, super easy. I love the way he's done this in the 2-2 rib, and he's given us a multiple of 4 plus 2. So, it's going to seam together perfectly. Everything's going to be beautiful.
Should we do an Italian cast on or just a regular, anything?
I'm not a fan of the E-wrap cast on for the bottom of
Oh,
a
yeah.
sweater. A lot of people like a long tail cast on, which is my go-to. A lot of people like a German twisted cast on, which is completely fine if that's your jam. I'm not a big fan of cable cast on. I think it doesn't have quite as much give as I like in a cast on. But again, you do you. I know that Rowan tends to use or to expect you to be using a long tail cast on or a version of a long tail cast on. Lena?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I did the snowflower, Martin Storey snowflower
Oh,
scarf.
yeah.
And I made so many mistakes, but you really can't tell, especially with this felted tweed. It has all these little speckles in it. It's really forgiving. It's a very forgiving fabric.
I'm so glad you said that. Thank you. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And but we're always very, very hard on ourselves. And here we are looking at our fabric like this. Nobody is looking at your sweater like this but you, right? So no worries. Don't worry. Be happy.
Oh,
Right? Okay, Helen, what you got?
Okay. Yeah, it ended evenly. I have 2 pearls on each side, or 2 knits on each side.
Okay. And how many stitches did you cast on?
I thought it was 145 because I skipped down. I just didn't.
What size are you making?
The 3rd size.
Okay, so somebody tell me how many stitches you cast on for the 3rd size.
142.
Right. And instead I cast on 145. But it came out even.
I don't know how it could have.
Possibly because I must have miscounted or something.
The math does not work that way. I am sorry to tell you. 145 minus 2 is not evenly divisible by 4.
No, I must have missed it.
Not lie. What?
Why does she have 145 and not 142? Why did she choose that? I missed it.
I think because in her size, it said to add additional 3 stitches on the last row, and she just cast those on.
At the beginning.
Helen, I want you to count your stitches again because having the right number of stitches is going to be excruciatingly important. No way around it. Got to have the right number of stitches, or this whole chart thing, might as well kiss it goodbye.
I am so used to knitting in the round that I keep forgetting that I'm supposed to be going backwards on the purl row.
Me too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Grr, grr.
Okay,
is.
I got 46, Ellen.
146.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That would be evenly divisible by 4. 146 minus 2 divided by 4 comes out even.
Yeah.
How many stitches are you supposed to have after you add your 3?
145.
Okay, so you will need to decrease 1 somewhere before you begin your motif.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right?
I'm glad I asked. Okay.
Me too.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we are working one pattern repeat, one 24 row repeat, plus our ribbing, 24, so we've got 7 days. If we do 4 rows a day, that will get you, not including your ribbing, not including your ribbing. After your ribbing, if you work 4 rows a day, you should be caught up. Okay, 2 in the morning, 2 at night.
You mean knit 4, rip out 3, and then knit them back?
Well, you must have a net gain of 4 rows each day.
Oh dear.
And then we have this club sweater on Thursday.
Oh, that's
Oh, I
great.
can't wait.
That is like so, I mean, again, two rows in the morning of this and 2 rows at night, or 4 rows when you're feeling fresh and frisky in the morning. Work your 4 rows, and then
Or another snowstorm.
the neat sweater is, my gosh, you guys, it's just stockinette. You're just going to zip that out. It's brainless, and you'll have your tracking sheet. Everything will be zip, zip, zip. So please don't worry about that. 4 in the morning, 4 at night, or 2 in the morning, 2 at night, 4 a day. That's all we ask. A can a week, right?
I have
Live
a
love.
question.
Uh-huh.
What size needle did everyone end up with for the fabric? Just out of curiosity, because I just started swatching and I think I'm gonna have
I'm
to
on
put
a
it down
5.
significantly. I'm
I'm
just
on a
curious. You're on a 5?
Yes.
What about everyone else who's,
I'm on a 5 too, but when I started out just regular knitting without stranding, it was really super tight and much smaller lengthwise, row-wise. But when I started to strand, it lengthened out considerably.
Linda, what are you on? You on a 5?
yeah, but I've only done, since we were talking here, 5 rows, and that's certainly not enough for gauge swatch, but it looks like it's gonna be 2, that I'm gonna need to go to a 4 or 3, which is surprising.
Wow.
I'm doing my ribbing in a 3.
Right.
Yeah, right, the ribbing, you go down 2
But you
sizes.
swatched your motif.
In a 5.
I just started as we were talking. And it's just looking, I'll see, because I need to do a few inches, but I think it's going to be too loose, that I'm going to need to go down, which I'm surprised, although I did start that other sweater I bought from you, and I'm on a 5 getting 22 stitches, just straight stockinette.
Which yarn is that? Which
Same
sweater
yarn
is that?
from you, the one with the color blocking.
Oh, the Bankfield.
I don't know the name.
Yes, Sue just bought yarn for that also.
I did.
But yeah, it's pretty. But that
Gorgeous.
I did get on a 5/22, and this is stranded. Interesting to hear, Helen, that you did use a 5 also.
Yeah, I was concerned originally because I figured it was going to be way too small, but you know, width-wise, it was perfect, but
Yeah,
length-wise,
I don't know that it'll
way
be
too
for me.
short.
I guess I'm so uncomfortable. This is the first time I'm trying two-handed Fair Isle. And not only knitting, but purling, and I am a thrower, not a picker.
Normally I am too.
Practice that motif. I think you'll find that it'll sort of even out and you'll get better at it.
Oh, absolutely. But to throw in purling with it, whoo, it's a double whammy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Well,
It really is.
I'm a picker.
And for me, I found out I was an advanced knitter once I could drink and knit. I figured I'm advanced if I can do that. I don't know what the other parameters are, but that was enough for me.
Flora, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I've got 2 questions.
Yes, darling.
They're
Please
sort
go
of quick.
So I'm doing my swatch on a 5, and it's a metal needle, and I'm having a real hard time, just a real hard time with the felted tweed, which I've worked with before. Would you recommend like a wooden needle or a bamboo needle for this? If it's like, it's just
I had
so
to switch
slippery.
I had to switch to a metal needle because I was getting a lot of drag on the bamboo. That again is a very personal sort of decision, you know, how you knit and how tight your stitches are and all of that. Try it on a different needle and see if that makes a difference for you. I have not been one of those people who's found that the needle material changes my gauge substantially. It does not for me, but I know that for a lot of people, it's a really, really huge factor. The only thing I can say is give it a try and see if it's more comfortable for you.
And that brings to the
Other question is, I'm actually sort of liking that. I mean, I'm thinking I've only done like I'm on row 12, so I'm about halfway through, and I think it's probably going to be a little big for a swatch. And I'm thinking I'm also maybe between sizes, and I'm thinking, well, if I did it on a 5 and it's a little loose, I might theoretically get enough ease that I don't need to go the whole next size up. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And that's certainly something to consider. I would want to know with more accuracy exactly how much too big your gauge is going to make it. It might not be enough. It might be too much. So before we decide, oh, I knit a little loosely, I'll just go down a size, or oh, I knit a little tightly, I'll just go up a size. We need to do the math and figure out what the resulting fabric is going to measure to know if that's the right decision. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it
Yeah,
does.
you want to know exactly what you're dealing with. You can't just say, oh, it'll be a little big, I knit a little loose. You know, it's best to actually know precisely how big it's going to be or
Yeah,
small.
and like you, I've done color work, but lately I've kept it at with circular, I mean within the round. And so this is the first time in ages I've knit in the English style with two hands and two colors. So I'm like, oh, this is really different. Okay. It's the way I learned. It's really good. Always love the results, but it takes a
You know,
little while to get used to it again.
Yeah, really.
it does. And one thing you can do if you struggle with the stranding with if you're a thrower, or even if you're, if you're a picker, just try working plain stockinette the other way.
Oh yeah.
Don't let the color work part go and just practice. Like if you're a thrower like I am, just practice stockinette with your left hand with the felted tweed and get that going on without the added complexity of the color work. Just practice doing the knit and purl with your alternate hand until you're a little more comfortable there, and then start with the stranded with that other hand if you are committed to doing two colors, two hands.
Thanks.
Ellen, where would you suggest that I decrease that other stitch, that extra stitch? Does it
Any
matter?
place. It's not the very last stitch.
Not on the very last stitch?
Not on the very last stitch. Knit two together somewhere after somewhere in the middle. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter at all. I hope everybody's feeling better about this whole process, excited and empowered. Okay, lovely ladies. We will see you next week, okay?
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
It was
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Super
Thank
fun to see
you.
you guys. Lovely to be with you. We'll see you next time.